Good morning. I'm Casey O'Brien. I'm the Director and Principal Investigator of the National CyberWatch Center. And this morning I just wanted to discuss a little bit the various community college cybersecurity centers throughout the country, a little bit of the landscape, and then the role of the National CyberWatch Center. And perhaps some of this discussion may spark some interest, some ideas, perhaps some partnership opportunities, but just give you a sense of kind of the role of the National CyberWatch Center, which is relatively new center. And so the discussion will focus on a little bit on the context, so our role as a regional center and our goals, this idea of networks of excellence, and then the new roles and goals and some of the new projects that we're currently working on and hoping to launch in the new year. So the CyberWatch Center started as NSF Advanced Technological Education funded regional cybersecurity education consortium headquartered at Prince George's Community College, which is in Largo, Maryland, which is about 10 miles from the White House. So it's in that kind of DC, Baltimore, Northern Virginia corridor. We got a planning grant in around 2004, became funded as a regional cybersecurity education consortium in 2005. And the entire focus, starting in 2005, of the CyberWatch Regional Center was to increase the quantity and the quality of the information, what we used to call back then information assurance workforce, since evolved into the cybersecurity workforce. And that simply meant quantity. Let's make sure we're increasing the numbers of people going into information assurance. And the quality piece meant and means make sure they have the right kinds of skills. So I've been involved with CyberWatch since its inception as a co-PI from 2005 to 2012. And as a regional center, our focus was really on these areas, curriculum development. So one of the things CyberWatch became known for early on was a model degree program in information assurance. It's really an extension of the kinds of courses we've all been teaching and the community college has been teaching for forever, Microsoft, Cisco. It's really a focus on networking, systems hardening, operating system security. It was designed so that students could get some professional certifications and that these schools could map their curriculum to what's now an NSA, so National Security Agency, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security program called the Center of Academic Excellence. So I'll talk a little bit about that program, CAE, and what that means and why perhaps you may want to consider your programs going after this designation. What's the value to your school, to your students? How would you sell this to administrators? Faculty development have done a lot with getting faculty up to speed to teach various cybersecurity related courses. Student development, this includes things like internship opportunities, competitions, et cetera, do a lot in the K-12 space, especially with middle school programs, Cool Careers for Girls, summer camps, and then dissemination outreach. For what it's worth, in terms of the national landscape, so you have the first funded regional NSF ATE Cybersecurity Center was CSEC, the Cybersecurity Education Consortium, and that's headquartered at University of Tulsa in partnership with the Oklahoma Workforce Development, and that's a kind of a unique program in that typically the ATE programs are specifically led by community colleges, and yet you have the University of Tulsa as the prime, but they have strong partnerships with the Oklahoma State Department of, I guess it's Workforce Development. They were the first NSF ATE regional center in cybersecurity, and they're still around, and they're focused primarily on control systems, mobile, and forensics. That's kind of been their sweet spot. The second funded NSF AT Cybersecurity Center was and is the Center for System Security Information Assurance, CASIA, at Moraine Valley Community College. And they have since gone through 2 rounds of funding, so 7 years as a regional center, and they got continuation funding to be a national resource center. And they're, I believe, in their 3rd year of their first round of funding as a national resource center. And if you're not familiar with the National Resource Center role in the AT program, it's simply to focus on those projects as a regional center that really defined your regional center. And for CASIA, that's primarily been faculty professional development, a lot with virtual learning environments, virtual labs, virtualization, high availability. They're also focusing on underrepresented populations, and one more thing that I'm missing. So that's been their foci in the past 3 years as now a national resource center in cybersecurity education. There is CyberWatch West, which for the first 2 years was headquartered at Mount San Antonio College, and because of some personnel and health reasons, the PI now is Corinne Sandy at Whatcom Community College, and so they're the newest of the regional AT Cybersecurity Centers. Dan Manson, right here from Cal Poly Pomona, is one of the co-PIs. Kim, you're involved in some CyberWatch. Joe, you're involved in some CyberWatch West activities. And they'll look, CyberWatch West will look to do a lot of the same kinds of programs and initiatives on the West Coast that CASIA did in the Midwest, and CSEC's done in the Southeast, and CyberWatch has done in the Mid-Atlantic region. There is, and the latest entry to the whole regional national cybersecurity center landscape is ACE, the Advanced Cybersecurity Education Group at Daytona State University. And the PI is Mark Paulett. If you don't know Mark, he comes out of the federal space. He's a world-renowned forensics expert who recently got his doctorate at the University of Central Florida and got some NSF funding to create a regional center focused primarily on digital forensics in the Georgia, Florida area. So, and CyberWatch has, since our time as a regional center, we got continuation funding in the fall of 2012 to become the National Cybersecurity Center in the ATE program. So you have basically 3 regional centers, the folks at Daytona State, focusing primarily on digital forensics, CyberWatch West, focusing on cybersecurity writ large. You have the Cybersecurity Education Consortium at the University of Tulsa. Then you have CyberWatch, National CyberWatch Center, which is looking at cybersecurity education solutions for the nation in the community college space, and then CASIA, which is a national resource center. And this is Cybersecurity Education Solution for the Nation. It's simply just the name of our NSF proposal. So our mission has changed, really, and I would add leading and supporting collaborative efforts to advance cybersecurity education and strengthen the national cybersecurity workforce. And a number of different goals, really. A lot of the same kinds of things we're doing as a regional center, although with some new initiatives. One is research in cybersecurity education. And some folks might say, well, why is a community college focused on research? And the simplest answer is I think there's an opportunity for community colleges to embrace this idea that some colleagues of mine are calling practice-centered education and research, the idea that students learn by doing. And good examples of that would be things like the competitions that CyberWatch has been involved with for many years. The idea that we can start putting some science and some research around those competitions to improve the validation of skills, for example. So our co-PI for this piece is Dr. Diana Burley, who's at George Washington University. She comes out of the School of Education and brings a lot of experience to that space. But really the meat of what I want to talk about is the new role as a national center and the shift from really a regional focus to a national focus. And one of the things that I think makes CyberWatch is its collaborative nature. So we started as a cybersecurity education consortium of 5 community colleges and 5 4-year schools in the DC, Baltimore, Northern Virginia region. And since we've grown, I'll show you the numbers, to about 140 2- and 4-year schools in 34 states. And this is simply just talking about the idea of networks in terms of, for example, social networks or network theory. The idea that networks increase their value exponentially by increasing the number of interconnected nodes, and that connecting these networks to other networks accelerates their growth. And I consider CyberWatch to be one network of excellence. Others include MPICT, CyberWatch West, and many of our partners. And I think that's really, quite frankly, what allows us to start doing the things that we were doing on a regional focus, and that organically grew nationally and positions us well to do things on a national scale, to really lead and support these collaborative efforts, to come up with real solutions for some of our cybersecurity education and workforce development challenges. And so you can see that, our network, one of many networks. So what are our roles as a national center? Well, there are many now. One is an advocate for the role of community colleges in cybersecurity education and workforce development, right? Really being a stand for the role that community colleges can and will play in discussions about cybersecurity education, problem solutions, and workforce development initiatives. And this includes things like being at national discussions when the federal government is starting to do things like define job roles in cybersecurity. So really difficult to do academic advisement with parents right now around cybersecurity, right? You can say there's lots of jobs, there's a huge demand, very small supply, a lot of the jobs will stay onshore, great pay, right? You can say all these things, but then the parents will say to me, well, what are the kinds of jobs that my son or daughter can get? And it's difficult to answer because those job roles are yet to be defined. And they're starting to be defined at a national level, specifically in the federal space, which will then trickle down to eventually private industry and businesses. And so the folks that are leading that initiative have been the National Institute of Standards and Technology through what's called the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. And this framework is simply job roles being defined in cybersecurity with requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities. So I want to be a forensics analyst. I need to know this and be able to do these things. Right? And this National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework is defining these job roles with the requisite KSAs for the first time. And as a national center, we're able to be part of these discussions and specifically help drive the things like the academic pathways for these job roles, right? So if I want to be a forensics analyst, what is the degree I need to have? Right? There's this thinking, not so much I don't think in the West Coast with discussions with people I've been having at this conference and my previous travels, but on the East Coast specifically, in the DC area, there's very much the mentality in cybersecurity that everybody has to have a baccalaureate degree. And a lot of that's driven by contractual requirements, right? So for government jobs, for all the defense contractors bidding on these jobs, the contract dictates a baccalaureate degree, quite frankly, for jobs that don't really require it. And it's a huge, huge challenge. On top of the challenges of the community college brand, I don't think is so hot generally, and things like corporate culture. We're X company, we only hire engineers with baccalaureate degrees. Right? These are some of the challenges. But for the first time, with discussions around defining job roles, we can influence the discussion and start articulating academic pathways to these job roles. So not everybody has to have a baccalaureate degree for every single job in cybersecurity. And that I see as one of the main roles of the National Center, is really be an advocate for the role of community colleges, again, in cybersecurity education and workforce development. We'll continue to build programs. So many of the new projects that I'll talk about in subsequent slides are brand new. An example of building new projects would be the National CyberSecurity Student Association, which I'll talk about in subsequent slides. A collaborator. We will continue to collaborate. So a good example of that would be the National Cyber League, which Dan and I presented on yesterday. The National Cyber League was founded by 4 AT centers, MPICT being one of them. CASIA, CyberWatch West, CyberWatch, and George Washington University. And the whole idea was there are people that have done competitions for a long time and felt like we needed learning objectives baked into these competitions. We need better metrics. We needed ways to validate skills. We needed to provide an ongoing season where students could do this stuff instead of one-off playoff systems. And so this became, in my opinion, the National Cyber League is the prototypical example of the kinds of projects that the National CyberWatch Center would be a collaborator. It's national in scope, it's game-changing, it's very cutting-edge, high risk, very visible, stretching the boundaries of our assumptions of what it means to actually validate skills and creating curriculum, and are we creating the right kind of curriculum, and are we really producing students with the skills we think we're producing, all of these things. Coordinator. A good example of the coordination role would be the Center of Academic Excellence program that I mentioned earlier. So this was historically a program designed and developed by the National Security Agency in partnership with the Tier 1 research schools. And it was a program that NSA created with these schools, the likes of Purdue University, for example, to pick the best and brightest that would then go work for the NSA. And that program has expanded over the years. The Department of Homeland Security got involved, and there were different criteria for getting the Center of Academic Excellence designation. So there was criteria if you were a research school, you had certain criteria that had to be met. You had a certain number of people getting PhDs and a certain number of publications, and there were criteria for four-year schools that were not research-focused, but more education-focused. So their curriculum had to meet these certain federal standards, and then along the way, there were discussions for many years about a CAE program for two-year schools. And it was absolutely very contentious discussions, very much an elitist mentality from the CAE folks. They absolutely did not want the two-year schools involved in this program. They felt like it would water down the value of the designation, and the director and PI of CyberWatch the first 4 years, Dr. Vera Zrodkovich, who was the chief academic officer at Prince George's Community College for a number of years, fought. And eventually, there is now a CAE 2Y designation. And CyberWatch has played a key role in helping kind of coordinate that program. And CyberWatch West, really one of their mandates will be to get the CAE 2Y designation to the western part of the U.S. There are currently no CAE 2Ys in California. Yet California has what is the largest number of community colleges in the country, 112 or something like that. So the CAE 2Y designation is going through a number of programmatic changes right now. But in my experience, there's a lot of value in this designation. One is it simply brings attention to your program from a federal perspective. So when you go to administrators, it's not just you saying, my program is awesome. Right?
But my program is awesome.
I know. But your administrators, right, having this external validation. Now we're in San Francisco, so validation from NSA may not be a good thing, right? But there is some external validation for the program. And it also helps to it helps to separate your students apart, right? They can put in their resumes and their portfolios. They got degrees and certificates from programs that have a center of academic excellence. Even if an employer has no idea what that means, it typically is some kind of a trigger. It usually prompts some kind of a discussion. The new programmatic changes to the Center of Academic Excellence program are allowing 2 years. All schools now going through this designation to have a specialty designation, so you can basically differentiate your program from other programs. So we focus on digital forensics, or we are a Center of Academic Excellence in software assurance, or we are a Center of Academic Excellence in X, Y, and Z. What that allows you to do is to market your programs. It allows employers looking for people with those skills to find your program, right, amongst other things. So that's a good example of the coordination role. And quite frankly, then the last role here, the promoter, is simply promoting the best and brightest projects in cybersecurity education and workforce development nationally. And that's really, as a national center, you know, my job is to travel around and talk with people and, hey, oh, you should hear about this program at Hartnell, they're doing this, and then when I'm talking with other people and they want to do something similar, you can make the connection. Hey, you should go talk to Joe, and he's doing similar things. You start connecting people together. So those are the roles as a national center. Some of the new projects I mentioned: the National Cyber League. The National CyberSecurity Student Association is brand new. So the idea here is to provide a community, an online portal where students can come together and network with each other, with faculty, with professionals. There would be guest bloggers, videos, access to resources of interest to students that are interested in cybersecurity as a career and or degree or certificate program. This is going to be launched probably in February. We sent out a survey, 5 questions, really it's a questionnaire, and to our partners, so MPICT, send it through their channels and whatnot. We got about 350 responses from students. And the first thing we asked them was, would you be interested in a Cybersecurity Student Association? It's like 96% said yes. The second question was, what would you want from a student association? And the main thing students said they wanted was an online community. They wanted something that integrates many of the features of various social media sites, blog capability, file repository. And so we built that site, and right now it's being pen tested. So we're doing basically a test of the site to make sure it's secure, doesn't have any vulnerabilities, and then it will be formally launched. So it is at cyberstudents.org, I think. Right now we just have a holding. Let's see, cyberstudents.org. I believe is, yeah. So this is not really officially launched yet, although that's the old skin. So, but you can create an account here, and you can start promoting this to your students. And we're gonna do an official launch, like I said, sometime in February. So look for more information from MPICT on this. Okay, go back here. Sorry. National curriculum. So the curriculum, for the most part, that's being offered at community colleges, in my opinion, is outdated for the most part. And there's a real opportunity, I think, for community colleges to really figure out how they're going to be relevant in the cybersecurity educational workforce development landscape. And a big part of what will drive the curriculum being offered at the 2-year levels is this National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework that I mentioned, which, by the way, is now being spearheaded by the Department of Homeland Security, not NIST. And so not only will these job roles define requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities and academic pathways, but they'll also help define the kind of curriculum we'll be offering. And I'm in my travels and the discussions I have with community colleges, when they ask me, well, I want to set up a cybersecurity program, what should I be setting up? What should our focus be? My answer is a bunch of questions. What are the strengths of your faculty? What is the industry needs locally where your community college is? What kinds of jobs are your students currently getting in IT? All of these factor into the kind, what are the four-year schools in your area? Have any articulation agreements that you have to factor in? If so, what is the four-year programs like? Is it comp-sci four-year-based programs? Well, that makes it very difficult to create an articulation agreement where you have an AAS program. Right? These are all the kinds of things that I have in my discussions with educators and folks like yourself to figure out what makes sense for you in terms of curriculum and cybersecurity education. And I think right now, by and large, the community colleges are focused primarily on network security and a little bit of forensics. Right? And in my travels, industry don't really want those people. I don't see many entry-level forensics jobs for students with an associate's degree. And the whole network security piece is really being folded under a lot of network administration, system administration-like jobs. So that's also very difficult to find entry-level work. So what kind of work then is it that our students can get? Factoring in the strengths of your faculty, employers' needs where you live, articulation agreements you have to factor with four-year schools, this whole idea of job roles being defined, right? We have to kind of sit down and figure out what makes sense for you, and what makes sense for you may not make sense for you. And we need to, I think, start diversifying the curriculum offerings at the two-year space. Not everybody should be doing network security. Not everybody should be doing forensics. And so part of this, I see a couple hands, and part of this is really taking a look at the current curriculum being offered at most of the community colleges and mapping that to this National CyberSecurity Workforce Framework job role. So at least we can say, all right, with the schools that are teaching cybersecurity right now, for the most part it's the same kind of content, what kinds of jobs can those students get? And what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that students can get by taking these 12 technical classes? At least start with that. And then look at any gaps and use the gaps to identify perhaps new curriculum offerings. And then as a national center, do much like we did as a regional center in identifying a new curriculum. So these are the technical courses, these are the prerequisites, and then with that, really start incentivizing, encouraging, paying people to develop the learning objects to support whatever these new curriculum offerings are going to be, and perhaps it's a couple of them. So this gentleman first, and then you.
So the focus areas is defined by the NIST framework. They're basically defining what the job roles are. Is that correct?
So that's correct. That's right. So NIST, working with 30 federal agencies, define these new job roles in cybersecurity with requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities at the federal level, right? And then the idea is that the federal agencies will adopt this, they'll assign job codes, and they can actually start hiring people based on these new cybersecurity job roles that don't really exist in the federal space. The hope, although I don't think it will ever really happen, would be that then that would somehow filter into the private industry business space. But as you all know, in the ICT space, right, I mean, there's 5 million different job titles for an IT-related, right? Google calls it this, Microsoft calls it this, and I don't think the government has the best track record in terms of cybersecurity as it goes anyways, right? You have this whole NSA thing going on, you have the Department of Homeland Security, who is responsible for protecting 90% of the critical infrastructures, so the things that keep civil society operating. That's a DHS mandate, yet, but I misspoke. DHS is responsible for securing the critical infrastructures, transportation, finance, health, banking, all that. But 90% of the critical infrastructure is owned by private industry. Right? So you have this mandate with a lot of responsibility, no power. So you have some big disconnects, but it's a start. It's a start, at least at the federal level, that will allow us to start thinking about academic pathways, curriculum, federal standards, etc.
But those focus areas are also, again, this is more a question than a statement, but are also the individual designations that a program would receive.
That's two different things. So the job roles are, right now a part of the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. If you Google National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, they've got I guess NIST is still technically managing the program. Got an interactive PDF that allows you to see these top-level ways in which job roles have been categorized. So protect and defend. You go in there and you can see, let's see, there are the jobs. It's like computer network defense and analysis. It's a job role. All right, and these are the things a person who is a computer network defense analyst should be able to do. Right? Now, the Center of Academic Excellence program is different from this. The Center of Academic Excellence program has certain criteria that have to be met in order for your school to get that designation, and that includes what are called knowledge units, which are, think of them as the common body of knowledge for a discipline. Okay, it used to be under the old CAE program that you had to map your curriculum to 2 federal standards that were part of this, what was called the 4010 series. And it was very specific stuff. So the first standard was 4011, and that was, I think, for like I remember the name of that federal standard, but the gist was, you had to basically prove, where do you talk about the difference between digital and analog? And then you'd say, I talk about that in my intro to networking class. Where do you talk about broadband versus baseband? I talk about that in my intro to networking. You would basically go through this mapping process of mapping where you talk about these federal standards as it relates to information assurance in your program. And that was one of the criteria for getting the CAE designation. But you also had to have faculty with certifications, and you had to have policies in place at your school that you said when people went to a public kiosk, there had to be some kind of a pop-up that said something about security policies, and you met this different criteria and you got the designation. Well, with the new CAE program, NSA and DHS and now DoD have done away with these federal standards as the criteria with which you map your curriculum. They've developed what are called knowledge units. The knowledge units are simply the common body of knowledge that people in the field need to have. All right, and in addition to those knowledge units, then you have to meet other criteria to get the CAE designation. And so along with these knowledge units that have to be mapped, you have to talk about policies and procedures. You have to talk about scripting. You have to, there's like 10 of them. Right? There are what are called optional knowledge units. And the optional knowledge units is where you can actually then go for this specialty, this focus, or the specialty designation. So you can say, I met the core knowledge units in my Security Plus class. For the most part, if you're teaching a Security Plus class, you can meet most of the core knowledge units to get that designation. But you have to also use some optional knowledge units then as part of the requirement to get the CAE designation. And that's where you can specialize. That's where you can say, I want our focus is on network security. So of all these 85 other optional knowledge units, I'm going to pick the 5 that relate to network security. And we're going to become a center of academic excellence, 2-year cyber defense, whatever they're calling it, with network security as a specialty. So does that help the distinction between the two?
Yes, it does. Thanks. Yeah. I guess my one point of confusion that was just that you just talked about was I directly align the job descriptions with the focus area.
So, not necessarily. So, you know, the tricky part is bridging the two. You have job roles that have requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities, and then you have requirements to become a center of academic excellence, which include these knowledge units, right, which have knowledge that students have to have. So it's very confusing. Suffice it to say that when folks, these 30 federal agencies were defining the job roles for this National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, they considered these knowledge units in that. They considered the common body of knowledge that these people in these job roles needed to have. But they're really kind of two separate beasts, right?
And then
Is the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, if I could just add one.
Sure, absolutely.
Same one. So last summer at the Citizen Corps Forum, they talked about version 2 of the framework coming out soon. I'm not sure exactly what time. Has that been published?
I think it is in draft form. I think this is a good question. I think it has been. Well, this is showing 1.0, version 1.0, so
Yeah.
apparently not.
I mean, the difficulty that it introduces for us as we're in the midst of creating a program is somewhat of a moving target.
Yeah. I would really focus on, if you're looking to develop a new program or update your program, I would focus on the CAE requirements personally.
So the 11.
The knowledge units and the optional knowledge units, and that's something that CyberWatch West can help any of these schools in
I'm actually
York.
on the East Coast for them.
But where are you?
Massachusetts.
Yeah, or we can, or Cassia. All three of our centers are working collaboratively to help with onboarding for those schools that want to get this designation, and or they have the current designation, but they're not really sure about the programmatic change. That's something we absolutely can help you with. We have people sit with you for free right now. So be sure to grab my contact information. We can sit down and kind of help you work through that. That's what I would encourage. Yeah. And over here then, you had a question?
Yeah, and I don't want to take away too much, but I just can't sit here and not let people know that everybody who's not in a community college thinks that all we do are do the high school students. 60% of my program have bachelor's degrees, and a large number of those people are already working in the information assurance area. We work with the Los Angeles Air Force Base, IA department. So, you know, we're not just dealing with, we have some that are coming out of college or whatever, but we have a large number of people who have degrees, who have experience, and who are working in the field in our programs already.
You're right. Yeah. So there's a community college in Maryland, Anne Arundel Community College. The former president, her joke was that the community colleges become the graduate school in America.
We can study.
Yeah, and I think that's an asset of ours. It's something we certainly can play up, right? People are retooling, right? They already have a degree. So absolutely, that's part of the whole community college brand piece. And I think we're bad at messaging.
Yeah, and I think this is so rich. I don't mean to take away from it, but I
perfectly.
sit here and not say
This is a discussion. So thank you. It is an important statement. It absolutely is, and you know, it's part of I see it as part of my role, really, as the director of this national center, to have these discussions with industry and Fed folks, because there's all these misconceptions. You know, that the young kids who are smart at 4-year schools, they Because they don't understand average age of our students, they don't understand what the grade basis. It's really a messaging thing. Right? So, thank you, though.
Okay, so
There was somebody, there was, Joe, did you have a question? Then you over here.
Yeah, I didn't want to take up too much of your time for this long hill again for the rest of the presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I think we have time. We have like 10 minutes. No?
Well, I guess one of the thoughts is the structure and the impetus and the definition that's provided from the federal side, I think is great. But I would also like to see there are some very well-respected security companies who have somewhat less than contempt for the federal side. And I think they're every bit as good. And frankly, they're the ones that are doing the things that the federal government are going to ask them to do. So I just kind of wonder what the mechanism, the factor, those, what they want is they want security animals.
Yep.
Degrees matter not.
That's right.
You know, they want high-speed, proven doers.
Yep.
And I just wanted to see how that feeds into the conversation.
I totally agree, and I don't really see private industry involved much in this whole national cybersecurity workforce framework. There are certainly some representatives, but not a lot. And so I think that's a huge deficit. And so I don't know who's going to be responsible for bringing in private industry.
Do they solicit you? Do you?
Who's they?
Yeah, right. Doing like Mandiants and Rapid7 and sorts of.
I guess stuff like that. I mean, go to RSA, you see the 1,500 pages there. You see the one place that has. That's only one use case. But at most very, very large security things, I mean, the federal government has a very important point to play, but just like you said, for SIP, the federal government is not the doer. They're not. It's the industries that are doing the doer, and if we're trying to vector our students towards the industries, Casey, that's what I think. If there's opportunity that you could ever insert yourself into whatever dialogue, that's a great avenue for
Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely agree. Yeah, and they're really, quite frankly, in this whole, in my opinion, this whole national framework discussion, they're largely absent.
Yeah.
And so I also had the chance to kind of get that perspective as part of there was a National Academies of Science panel convened last year to look at the professionalization of the cybersecurity workforce. And I was the token community college guy on that panel. And we convened 3 open fora, I guess, to elicit feedback from various stakeholders. And we went to the RSA conference. And what was evident was these companies they do their own thing, they define their own jobs, their own requisite knowledge skills, they don't care what's going on in DC. I mean, it was just like a whole other world. And so, but I certainly, in my travels and my discussions, it's an important role to play. So I don't have really any answer, but I agree with you, though.
Yeah, I just want to comment. You mentioned the KUs and development courses and stuff. I went through the CyberWatch curriculum course workshop, which is really good. And kind of one of the things I found out going through the framework, I thought it was easier to actually build objectives around the NICE than this framework, and then just plug in the KUs, because the KUs tend to be a little broader than those are.
They're very high level.
Yeah.
The knowledge units they're not really action or performance based.
Yeah, exactly.
The learning objective of this knowledge unit is know the difference between, because knowing is not measurable really, right? You ever written syllabi with learning objectives, you know the kinds of verbs you have to use. All of that's really missing from the knowledge unit. So that's a good suggestion.
And I went to a talk when they were first building the framework, and I think their concept was you can mix and match, so you can do protect and defend and other stuff. Their goal was to make it so it was easy, so you weren't in those kind of scope type positions that you can mix and match the different KSAs to build it for your own.
Sure. Sure.
And that's actually, if I can interject,
sure.
That's actually part of the computer science industry that too, because now my understanding is that there are 11 core knowledge units
yep.
that have to be part of any road grant.
That gets the CAE designation, correct. Then 5 optional units on top of that. 5 optional units from like a list of 85 So these would be, this is where you have an opportunity if you want to then have a specialty CAE designation. So we do nothing but software assurance. So we're going to, in addition to the 11 core knowledge units that are really the body of knowledge for the field, you have to then come up with 5 additional optional. And there's like, I don't quote me on this, there's like 85 of them or something, of which you have to pick 5. And you can do what this gentleman is saying, is just pick and choose and just become a CAE 2Y with just, I've met all of the criteria, or I can specialize and be a CAE 2Y in software assurance, or CAE 2. So, webinar series, we're going to be launching a webinar series. The first one is actually going to be sometime in February. The first one is going to be on the CAE 2Y program. Programmatic changes, support, how to onboarding, support, things like that. A whole bunch of different series, a monthly panel forum with the moderator, recorded, made available after, a digital press. So the idea that white papers, position papers, research, any of the research coming out of the National CyberWatch Center, books, it'll be a digital press with the print-on-demand model, and then the clearinghouse, the national repository for lab exercises, for video resources, learning objects, research papers, et cetera, et cetera. We're working with the folks at the University of Wisconsin. It's formerly an NSF-AT funded program called Internet Scout, which some of you may have heard of. The University of Wisconsin folks that we're working with are information scientists and librarians. They have an open source product called CWIS, C-W-I-S, Collection Workflow Integration System. And so we've outsourced kind of the behind-the-scenes servers and the day-to-day management and operation of the clearinghouse, which is really just an online digital library. Right? To the Wisconsin folks, we are developing a controlled vocabulary that will help with meta tagging and things like that, so you can find these resources. And this is a good example of promoting the kinds of resources you have. So many of you know Sam Bone, right? Incredible resources that you know, lots of lab exercises, right? We point to that to help provide a controlled vocabulary for that. So if you're looking for some really good hands-on crypto labs that you can do in a Security Plus class, right? Perhaps the clearinghouse might have those, or links to research papers on integrating performance-based assessments, Mark, in your classes or whatever. So this is a new project, the clearinghouse. So that's really the official dog and pony show. We've got about 3 minutes. My contact information. I'm happy to answer any questions or allay any fears. Yes?
I have a question. Initially, you talked about curriculum development.
Yeah.
This is an obviously fast-changing field. And, you know, one of the things with the NSF is they didn't necessarily want funding to be used for curriculum development. I guess a lot of times it ends up being unique around a certain instructor who does something. And so this always brings up the question, well, how do we get this new information? How do we get this new courses developed, especially in the fast-changing field of security? How do you take something where we learn about whatever happened to target, right? Once we do learn that, how do you get that into curriculum right away? So it's
great question. So NSF gave us $250,000 to try to solve one part of that, which is not enough people creating quality content. Or how do we even know that the content's any good? When we have the Sam Bones, we have 5, 6, 7 people throughout the country that are developing most of the hands-on content, right? So we don't have enough people developing, and how do we know the stuff that isn't being developed is any good? So what we're going to look at doing is probably through the Student Association is like a crowdfunding pilot. Crowdsource. So we get faculty and students, pay them a small stipend to co-create content together for our community, and then have the community actually rate the content, all kind of an Amazon or any kind of a peer review system, right? You go to buy shoes at Zappos, read reviews. I'm a big review leader, right? So we use a similar model to get the community that's actually creating and using the content to then, I hate to even say credential, but at least rate it. And then that becomes the content that rises to the bubble. So we have more people creating, and those people that are creating and using are rating. I think that's one way that might help. I think could be one solution to the problem you pose, right? And so we are building a portal through the Student Association, and like I said, we'll have stipends available. It was a 3-year project. Part of the mapping of the current CyberWatch model degree program to the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework was part of that $250,000. But in year 3, we're looking to pilot this idea, this concept. So, you know, I think it also gets at perhaps an angle that would allow us to talk about the value proposition of our students, which is co-creating content or creating content on their own. So more of the soft skills stuff. They're writing, they're presenting, they're editing, they're working collaboratively with their teacher, with other students. We certainly can incentivize the community. Either perhaps we then take the content that's 5 stars and we sell that for 99 cents, and everything the 3 and 4 stars we give away free, and 30% of the 99 cents goes back to the creator, and we get 10 cents, and right, or we simply just incentivize people through recognition, and they start developing a reputation. So I think that can work. We'll see. We're going to pilot it. So that's it, Micah?
Good, man.
I'll be around all today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.